I remember it like it was yesterday, the sound of footsteps in the dark, slow and deliberate, coming closer to our tent. At first, I thought it was my dad checking on us, but the face peering in wasn't familiar at all. It was taller, broader, and colder, like someone who didn't belong anywhere near our backyard. My heart was hammering, my voice froze, and I realized that whatever this was, it wasn't going to just walk away quietly. You ever get that feeling when something isn't right but you can't move, can't speak, can't even blink because you're waiting for it to happen? That's exactly what I felt that night. And the worst part? We weren't even inside our house. We were outside, completely exposed. It all started earlier that evening, when the backyard felt like the safest place in the world. But by the time the darkness settled, it became a maze of shadows, noises, and unseen eyes. That's when I understood. Sometimes the places that feel safe during the day are the ones that hide the most danger at night. Earlier that day, our backyard felt like its own little world. We lived in a house on the edge of town, and behind it stretched nearly 2 acres of grass, dotted with trees and hidden corners. On 3 sides, the yard was framed by thick woods that seemed peaceful in the afternoon sunlight. There was a trampoline in the far corner, an above-ground pool shimmering in the warm light, and a big detached garage that we often used as a fort or clubhouse. For kids our age, it was paradise. Soccer, baseball, football, you name it, we could play it here. We even had our own version of hide-and-seek called Manhunt, where running through the grass and ducking behind trees became the most exciting part of the day. My friends and I would spend hours laughing, racing, and imagining the backyard was bigger than it really was. That Friday, the sun was dipping lower, casting long shadows across the yard, but we didn't notice anything strange yet. All we could think about was setting up tents, grabbing snacks, and starting our overnight campout. It seemed like the perfect night. We didn't realize just how quickly that feeling of safety could vanish. By late afternoon, my friends had started arriving. Mike, Michael, and Jason, each carrying a backpack stuffed with snacks, flashlights, and sleeping bags. We spent the first hour just running around the yard, tossing a soccer ball back and forth, diving for it in the grass, laughing every time someone tripped or missed a pass. The air smelled like freshly cut grass mixed with the faint scent of the nearby woods. It was carefree and lighthearted, the kind of atmosphere that makes you forget the world outside your little backyard. Once we burned off enough energy, we started setting up the tents. I had some experience because of my time as a Boy Scout, so I took the lead while my friends followed my instructions half-heartedly, more interested in joking around than actually helping. We positioned the tents strategically, one tucked near the trampoline, the other close to a corner of the yard where the grass met the edge of the woods. It was perfect. Plenty of space to play our night games, but also enough room to feel hidden. As the sun started to sink behind the treetops, shadows stretched across the yard in strange shapes. At first, we didn't think much of it. Shadows are normal, right? But there was a subtle shift in the air. The light seemed dimmer, even though the backyard lamps had flicked on, casting a soft glow. A cool breeze whispered through the trees, carrying faint, unidentifiable sounds from deep inside the woods. We laughed it off, thinking it was just nature, just the wind rustling leaves. None of us realized that this subtle change marked the beginning of something we would never forget. By the time the tents were fully assembled, the backyard had transformed. The daylight that once made it feel like our private playground had been replaced by a creeping darkness. The familiar hiding spots for Manhunt now seemed more like traps than fun corners. And while we were joking and tossing flashlights around, none of us noticed the first sign that something, or someone, was watching. It started as a sound we couldn't quite place. While we were joking around near the tents, a faint rustling came from the edge of the woods. At first, we laughed, thinking it was just a squirrel or maybe a raccoon scavenging for food. But then there was a heavier, slower step, too deliberate to be an animal. We froze for a moment, glancing at one another, hearts beating a little faster. Mike whispered, "Did you guys hear that?" We nodded, trying to convince ourselves it was nothing. But even as we continued setting up flashlights and checking sleeping bags, there was a growing unease that made our laughter sound hollow. Shadows shifted in ways that didn't make sense, and a corner of the yard that had always seemed empty suddenly felt occupied. Then it happened. One of the motion-sensing lights along the side of the house flicked on, illuminating part of the yard that should have been dark. We all instinctively turned toward it. For a second, nothing was there. Just the yard. Just the grass. Just the quiet. Except for that slow, measured sound moving back toward the woods. I remember thinking how absurd it was to feel so vulnerable in a place we knew so well. The backyard had always been our fortress, our safe zone. But that night, it began to feel like a labyrinth full of eyes we couldn't see. Something was out there, and it wasn't a stray animal. We didn't yet know how close it was or how dangerous, but the seed of fear had been planted. By the time night had fully settled, the backyard no longer felt like our playground. The shadows grew longer, merging with the darkness at the edges of the woods. Every sound, the crack of a branch, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, made us jump. Even laughter felt wrong, hollow, like we were intruding on a place that didn't belong to us anymore. We tried to continue our game of manhunt, but something was off. Every time one of us ran toward a hiding spot, we felt eyes on us. I remember glancing toward the tree line and catching a glimpse of movement, a shadow that didn't match any tree or bush. It was tall, upright, and deliberate. Michael and Jason noticed it too, but we all hesitated to point it out. Fear made us silent, each of us hoping someone else would say something first. Then the unmistakable happened. A trash bin near the side of the house wobbled as if someone or something had brushed against it. The motion-sensing light flickered, revealing nothing at first glance. We all froze, realizing it wasn't the wind or a raccoon. Something had been there, close enough to trigger the sensor. But now it had vanished again into the darkness. That's when we decided the game was over. The fun had vanished. We called it off, each of us feeling our heartbeats echo through the yard. The backyard we had once felt in complete control of now felt like a trap. Something unseen was among the shadows, patient, waiting, and perhaps even watching us. It happened after we finally decided to settle into the tents. Mike and I shared one while Michael and Jason took the other. We tried to laugh it off, tossing jokes back and forth, but the tension was still thick in the air. Every rustle, every whisper of wind made our hearts skip a beat. Then I heard it. A soft, deliberate step approaching our tent. I froze, holding my breath. The zipper started to slide open slowly. At first, I thought it was my dad, checking on us as he often did. But as the shadow leaned closer, I realized something was very wrong. The face peering in wasn't familiar. It was older, taller, and colder than anyone I knew. My stomach dropped. The stranger whispered, "What are you doing out here?" My voice caught in my throat, and I stammered out something about wanting to sleep outside, but the man didn't respond. He just leaned further, reaching toward the tent. I screamed, high-pitched and desperate, and that's when chaos erupted. Mike woke instantly, screaming too. The man grabbed at our ankles, trying to silence us, but panic had taken over. He pulled back, realizing the risk of exposure, and vanished into the shadows. We scrambled out of the tent, hearts pounding, adrenaline flooding our veins. We ran toward the house, our footsteps clumsy and frantic. My dad was rushing out the back door at the same time, shouting questions, and the stranger was gone, disappeared into the night. But the fear didn't leave. The encounter had confirmed our worst suspicions. Someone had been watching us close enough to reach into the tent, and we had almost walked right into danger. Chaos had fully taken over the backyard. We bolted toward the house, tumbling over grass and small roots, screaming our lungs out. Mike and I tripped over the edge of our tent, while Michael and Jason were already halfway there, calling our names in panic. The air was filled with the sound of our footsteps, our panicked breathing, and the soft rustle of the stranger retreating into the woods. My dad was right behind us, flashlight swinging wildly, shouting at whoever was out there. "Show yourself if you've got the guts." His voice carried through the night, and for a moment, it felt like the man might step back into view, but there was only silence in return. Once inside, my mom was already on the phone with the police, her voice tense but controlled. We explained everything. The figure in the dark, the motion light, the zipper sliding on our tent, the voice. Each word felt heavy, like admitting just how close we had come to a real threat. Even as the police arrived, it didn't feel like relief. They listened carefully, took notes, and made a report. We were safe for the moment, but the image of that stranger, The way he had moved, deliberate and silent, yet so close, was burned into our minds. The backyard, once our kingdom, had transformed into a place of danger, and we all knew deep down that even with the police, someone, or something, had been there, just outside, watching. After the police left, the house felt unusually quiet. The backyard, once full of laughter and the scent of grass and sunlight, now seemed heavy, shadowed by the memory of what had happened. We sat together in the living room, blankets wrapped around us, lights on, staring at the windows that looked out onto the dark yard. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind through the trees, made us jump. We couldn't sleep that night. Every time our minds wandered, we imagined the stranger walking among the shadows, watching, waiting. Even small noises, like the hum of the refrigerator or the tapping of a branch on the window, felt amplified, threatening. It was a feeling that refused to leave, one that lingered long after the adrenaline faded. Over the next few days, the backyard seemed almost normal in daylight, but the fear never fully went away. We played cautiously, stayed near the house, and never ventured too close to the edge of the woods. I thought about that figure often, wondering who he was, why he had come so close, and whether he might return. The strangest part? We never saw him again. No one ever explained his presence. The police had a report, but it didn't change the fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that something had been there, observing us, silent and deliberate. That night left a mark, one that reminded us that even the safest places can hide the darkest surprises, and that the shadows sometimes belong to strangers we hope never return.